Hello, my friends. I've been hearing about the Great Reset for years now, and it appears with the advent of COVID-19 and the statements from the World Economic Fund and others that because of the slowdown caused by COVID-19, it's the perfect time to institute the Great Reset for real. You probably heard something about this and maybe didn't really know what it was or heard about it from a conspiracy theorist or from somebody who believes that all their financial problems will be resolved when the Great Reset sets in. I've been hearing about the vast amount of money that can be gained if a person prepares for this Great Reset, and I know a lot of people that have invested in it as well. So I'm thinking now is the time. With the presidential debacle, the COVID-19, the lockdowns, the near end of air travel, the stalling of vehicle travel, and the late loss of jobs all over the world, that maybe we need to look into this right now as believers. Try to understand to some extent what this is all about, what it's really all about, that is, going to the source rather than to some individual that thinks they know a lot about it, and if necessary, sounding the alarm. And I would like to have a special online forum to explain some of the issues of the Great Reset in December, actually Sunday, December the 20th at 8 p.m. I've already got it scheduled. Sunday, December 20th, 8 p.m. And then a follow-up Sunday, January 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for us to present the forum and let people in our circle of influence know what is going on. Now, I'm needing some forum members. There's a hesitation to be a part of this, at least from those who I normally get on to speak at a forum. So I'm asking you who are listening to this right now to finish this short article and consider whether you would be a one to research the Great Reset a little further and be a part of that forum. I haven't decided what the venue is yet. It could be done on YouTube Live or Facebook Live, or we could continue to do it privately on Zoom. But I need some help on this. If you know about it or are willing to know about it and are willing to speak about it, please let me know. And you can let me know either by a comment, but I'll need to know your contact information. Or I'll tell you what, drop me a line at yahad.me. That is a contact form. That is YAHAD.me. M-E. Please just fill out your contact information and in there a little about what you're willing to do in regards to these special events and shoot it off to me. Again, December 20th, 8 p.m. Pros and cons of the Great Reset. January 17th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Faith and the Great Reset, or coup d'etat, if you prefer. At this time, I just have one article to share with you. I've looked at many of them, but this is the shortest with probably the most pertinent information, and it comes from technocracy.news, and the title of it is Technocrats Behind the Great Reset. It starts with an information box and a quote from Dr. Joseph Mercola, who is among the few researchers and writers who truly understand what technocracy is and where it is headed. He's repeatedly published articles calling it like it is and warning Americans of the clear and present danger. Now, I'm not saying myself that there is danger, because I'm not too deep into this, and most of what I heard is positive about this. But Mercola says the Great Reset is about getting rid of capitalism and free enterprise and replacing them with technocracy, publicly referred to as, and I quote, sustainable development and, quote again, stakeholder capitalism, whatever that is. So this article is by Patrick Wood, a critical expert on sustainable development and green economy, and Agenda 21, which we have talked about here before. He's the author of Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation, etc., etc. Here we go. What is this Great Reset we're now hearing about? In a nutshell, The Great Reset refers to a global agenda to monitor and control the world through digital surveillance. As explained by journalist James Corbett in his October 16, 2020 Corbett Report, the Great Reset is a new social contract that ties every person to it through an electronic ID linked to your bank account and health records, and a social credit ID that will end up dictating every facet of your life. It's about getting rid of capitalism and free enterprise and replacing them with sustainable development and stakeholder capitalism, terms that belie their nefarious anti-humanity intents. As noted in the book, Technocracy, The Hard Road to World Order, and I quote, "Sustainable development is technocracy. The sustainable development movement has taken careful steps to conceal its true identity, strategy, and purpose, but once the veil is lifted, you will never see it any other way. Once its strategy is unmasked, everything else will start to make sense." And on this technocracy.news site, there are a lot of reports regarding what some people think are conspiracy theories about globalization, trilaterals, and world order, but I haven't read them yet. In her blog post, The Great Reset for Dummies, Tessa Lena summarizes the purpose behind the call for a global reset. And I quote, "The mathematical reason for the Great Reset is that thanks to technology, the planet has gotten small and the infinite expansion economic model is bust. But obviously, the super wealthy want to continue staying super wealthy, and so they need a miracle, another bubble, plus a surgically precise system for managing what they perceive as their limited resources. Thus, they desperately want a bubble providing new growth out of thin air, literally, while simultaneously they seek to tighten the peasants' belts, an effort that starts with behavioral modification. We're going through that right now with these masks and all these breaches of liberty. Behavioral modification, that is resetting the Western peasant's sense of entitlement to high life standards and liberties, or as some call it, privilege. The psychological reason for the Great Reset, I continue the quote, is the fear of losing control of property, the planet, I suppose. If you own billions and move trillions, your perception of reality gets funky. And everything down below looks like an anthill that exists for you. Just ants and numbers, your assets. Thus, the practical aim of the Great Reset is to fundamentally restructure the world's economy and geopolitical relations based on two assumptions. One, that every element of nature and every life form is a part of the global inventory managed by the allegedly benevolent state, which in turn is owned by several suddenly benevolent wealthy people via technology. You're probably naming some of these suddenly benevolent wealthy people in your mind right now. And two, that all inventory needs to be strictly accounted for, be registered in a central database, be readable by a scanner and easily ID'd, and be managed by AI using the latest science. The goal is to count and then efficiently manage and control all resources, including people, on an unprecedented scale with unprecedented digital precision, all while the masters keep indulging, enjoying vast patches of conserved nature, free of unnecessary sovereign peasants and their unpredictability. Then there's a diagram called Technocracy and the Great Reset, Psychological Operations Guide. At the top is fear, environment, COVID-19. Next step is 4 stages toward global technocracy. Number 1, demoralization, i.e. shaming. 2, dehumanization, i.e. masks. 3, crisis, i.e. casedemic. And 4, normalization, the new normal. That splits into 2 ways by which this can be accomplished. One is behavior modification, which feeds down into social distancing, and health IDs, which feeds down to health and credit systems and vaccination. All of that mess trickles down to a controlled world of smaller numbers of perfect people, which then attains the goal of sustainable and inclusive environment. These new global assets can also be turned into brand new financial instruments that can then be traded. An example of this was given by Vandana Shiva, PhD, in my interview with her. In it, she explained how India is headed toward zero-budget natural farming, a brand new concept of farming, listen to this, in which farmers must trade the carbon rate in their soil on a global market if they want to make a living. They'll get no money at all for the crops they actually grow. There's not a single area of life that is left out of this Great Reset plan. The planned reform will affect everything from government, energy, and finance to food, medicine, real estate, policing, and even how we interact with our fellow human beings in general. Privacy protections, of course, are a major hurdle in this plan, which is why every effort is made to get people to loosen their views on the right for privacy. In the U.S., we also have the Constitution that stands in the way, which is why efforts to undermine, circumvent, ignore, or nullify it are increasing. Lena has another quote. To sum it up, the desired end result is a giant, joyless, highly controlled global conveyor of everything and everybody, where privacy is tremendously expensive, dissent is unthinkable, and spiritual submission is mandatory. It's like a 24/7 medicated reality, except the medications are both chemical and digital, and they are reporting you back to the mothership, which can then punish you for bad behavior by, say, blocking your access to certain places, or by putting a hold on your digital bank account, perhaps without any human intervention at all. End quote. An October 5th, 2020 Winter Oak article addressed the technocratic fascist vision of Professor Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, who wrote the book on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Schwab announced the World Economic Forum's Great Reset Initiative in June 2020, which includes stripping all people of their privately owned assets. In addition to being a staunch technocrat, Schwab also has a strong transhumanist bend, and he has spoken of a near future in which humans merge with machines and in which law enforcement will be able to read our minds, maybe by using precogs. Winter Oak, a British nonprofit social justice organization, points out that Schwab and his globalist accomplices are using the COVID-19 pandemic, quote, to bypass democratic accountability, to override opposition, to accelerate their agenda, and to impose it on the rest of humankind against our will, unquote. Ultimately, the Great Reset will result in two tiers or people. The technocratic elite, who have all the power and rule over all assets, and the rest of humanity, who have no power, no assets, no say-so in anything. This is no conspiracy theory. The plan is out in the open. As noted by Time magazine, I have that article, the COVID-19 pandemic has provided a unique opportunity to think about the kind of future we want, unquote. The same statement has been delivered by a number of politicians and organizations around the world in recent months. Schwab's book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, also urges industry leaders and decision makers to make good use of the pandemic and not letting the crisis go to waste. Both are quotes. Incidentally, the owner of Time magazine and founder of Salesforce, Mark Benioff, is also a board member of the World Economic Forum, WEF, so he's clearly familiar with the reset plan. The problem is that while the plan is being sold as a way to, finally, make life fair and equitable for all people, the required sacrifices do not apply to the technocrats running the system. Ultimately, the Great Reset will result in two tiers or people. As we said before, the technocratic elite, who have all the power and rule over all assets and the rest of humanity, While technocracy is not a political system, but an economic one, in practical terms, it does resemble fascism. None of it is being sold under the banner of fascism, of course. Instead, they use financial terms like stakeholder capitalism, described by Forbes magazine as, and I quote, the notion that a firm focuses on meeting the needs of all its stakeholders, customers, employees, partners, the community, and society as a whole. Again, Patrick Wood is the author. The next article by the same author is called Super Soldier, Military Technocrats Master the Brain. The Technocracy News editor writes, when the technocrats and transhumanists in the military invent new technology for the sake of enhancement of warfare, it's just a matter of time before it will turn its forces on the citizenry that paid for the research in the first place. Now the article begins. A new machine learning algorithm can successfully determine which specific behaviors, like walking and breathing, belong to which specific brain signal. And it has the potential to help the military maintain a more ready force. At any given time, people perform a myriad of tasks. All of the brain and behavior signals associated with these tasks mix together to form a complicated web. Until now, this web has been difficult to untangle and translate. But researchers funded by the U.S. Army developed a machine learning algorithm that can model and decode these signals, according to a November 12th press release. This research, which used standard brain datasets for analysis, was recently published in the journal Nature Neuroscience. Quote, our algorithm can, for the first time, dissociate the dynamic patterns in the brain signals that relate to specific behaviors and is much better at decoding these behaviors. Unquote, Dr. Mariam Shineki, the engineering professor at the University of Southern California who led the research, said in her statement. Dr. Hamid Kreem, a program manager at the Army Research Office, part of the U.S. Army Combat Capabilities Development Command's Army Research Laboratory, told NextGov Shaneki and her team used the algorithm to separate what they call behaviorally relevant brain signals, behaviorally irrelevant brain signals. Quote, this presents a potential way of reliable measuring, for instance, the mental overload of an individual, of a soldier, Krim said. If the algorithm detects behavior indicating a soldier is stressed or overloaded, then a machine could alert that soldier before they are even able to recognize their own fatigue, Krim said. Improving self-awareness is central to the Army's interest in this research, he added. The research is part of an effort to establish a machine-brain interface. Eventually, Krim said, this research may contribute to the development of technology that can not only interpret signals from the brain, but also send signals back to help individuals take automatic corrective action for certain behaviors. Imagination is the only limit when it comes to the potential of this technology, Krim said. Another futuristic application could enable soldiers to communicate with each other without ever opening their mouths. If you're in the theater and you can't talk, you can't even whisper, but you can still communicate, Krim said. If you can talk to your machine, and the machine talks to the other machine, and the machine talks to the other soldier, you have basically a full link without ever uttering a word. End of article. And there's story after story here. The next one is NASA, FAA make moves to offer some staff app-based personalized professional coaching, undoubtedly on the Great Reset and the New World Order. So if you want to look into these various articles, you can go to nextgov.com and technocracy.news. There's a lot more. Again, don't forget, at the beginning of this recording, I talked about having some forums on this with autodidacts, people that are in the know about this, that people that just really don't have any power. It would be good to hear something from that side, and really that's us. The only power we have is in our mouths. Let us use that. A couple of the heads of this movement you know. The prime one is Prince Charles. He's the one that actually introduced this whole scheme. And another one, the discoverer of the internet, Al Gore. And I have no doubt that the rest of the characters in this act are names that you're very familiar with, because they are the authors and benefactors of social media. So, my friend, there's a short review, short. Take a look at some yourself, let me know, and help me with this forum. Other people need to know about this, hopefully as a substitute to some of their conspiracy theories that really have little value in truth. Pray for me, Jackson Snyder.